I'm the middle of three brothers. I have an older brother and a younger brother. Both of them grew up in the Boy Scouts. My older brother, Scott, actually made it all the way to Eagle Scout. My younger brother joined for a while, but eventually quit. For some reason, though, my parents never pushed me to become a scout when I was a kid. Looking back, that always felt strange to me because I remember being incredibly jealous of my older brother. Whenever my mom would take me along to Scott's Pinewood Derby races and scout events, I would watch all the other boys with their uniforms and badges and wish I could be part of it too. But the thing I was most jealous of were the camping trips. The troop would go out into the wilderness for entire weekends. I remember tagging along in the car once or twice when my parents dropped Scott off. I'd watch them setting up tents, building campfires, and getting ready for the night. But since I was younger and not part of the troop, I wasn't allowed to stay. I always had to go back home with my parents. The backyard campout. One thing I clearly remember was how Scott would bring a tent home before every camping trip to practice setting it up in our backyard. I was probably 7 or 8 years old at the time when I came up with what I thought was the greatest idea ever. If I couldn't go camping in the woods, why not camp in our backyard? So that's exactly what we did. Our backyard was actually huge. We lived in a neighborhood where the yards kind of blended together without many fences. There were just patches of trees and brush separating the properties, which made the whole place feel a lot more like the woods. We even had a fire pit back there. My parents decided to play along with the idea and helped us build a fire so we could roast marshmallows and have a real camping experience. My little brother joined us for the marshmallows, but he was only 4 at the time, so my parents took him inside when it got late. There was no way they were letting a 4-year-old sleep outside. So that night it was just me and Scott in the tent, late at night. Back then, the Game Boy Advance SP was the thing everyone had. So after climbing into our sleeping bags, Scott and I pulled out our Game Boys and started playing. I remember I was playing Super Mario Bros. 2, a game I loved but could never beat as a kid. Eventually, we turned them off and tried to go to sleep, but I couldn't. I was tired, but I just couldn't get comfortable. Sleeping in a sleeping bag felt weird, and the ground wasn't exactly soft. After what felt like hours, I finally drifted off. Waking up. When I woke up, I was confused for a moment. The inside of the tent was dark, and it took me a few seconds to remember where I was. Then I noticed something. Scott was gone. His sleeping bag was empty. The tent zipper was still closed, though. I figured he must have gone back inside because he couldn't sleep. But suddenly, I didn't feel so brave anymore. The idea of being alone in the tent in the backyard started to scare me, so I got up and slowly unzipped the tent. Before crawling out, I peeked outside just to make sure everything was clear. And that's when I saw him. The man. Someone was sitting by the fire pit. It wasn't Scott. It was a grown man. He was sitting there in the dark, facing the tent. And I'm sure he saw me. I gasped and immediately zipped the tent back up and crawled into my sleeping bag like that thin layer of fabric would somehow protect me. I stayed completely still. The tent was almost pitch black, with just a faint gray glow from the moonlight shining through the fabric. Then I heard the chair move. My heart felt like it was going to explode. I prayed he wouldn't get up. But then I saw a shadow appear against the side of the tent. He was standing right outside. I thought if I didn't move, maybe he would think the tent was empty. Then I heard the zipper. Slowly, very slowly, it slid down a few inches. There was a small gap near the bottom of the tent where the zipper didn't fully seal. I had never noticed it before that night. But suddenly something filled that gap. An eye. One single eye pressed against the opening, looking directly at me. I could see the white of it in the darkness. For a few seconds, I was completely frozen. Then the eye squinted slightly, like the person was smiling. The zipper moved another inch. And that's when I finally screamed. He ran, I scrambled backwards, kicking out of my sleeping bag and knocking into the tent poles. Immediately, I heard footsteps sprinting away across the yard. At that exact moment, our back porch light flipped on. My dad burst out the back door yelling and ran across the grass toward the fire pit. But whoever the man was, he was already gone. My parents called the police, but they never found him. That night, I slept in my parents' bed. And for a long time after that, I was terrified to sleep alone. The worst part, a few weeks later, just when things
were starting to feel normal again, something happened at school. During lunch recess, we were playing near the fence that separated the schoolyard from the street. I ran up to the fence during the game and grabbed onto it. That's when I heard someone say, "Hey!" I turned around. A man was standing on the other side of the fence. He asked me for directions to somewhere I don't even remember now. I told him I didn't know. Then he said something that made my heart drop. "Your name's Chris, right?" I immediately said no. He smiled. Then he said, "You don't remember me, do you?" At that point, I ran straight to one of the teachers supervising recess. When we looked back toward the fence, the man was gone. But I knew. I knew it was the same man from outside my tent. And to this day, I still wonder what would have happened if I hadn't screamed that night.